Morning. Greetings. I'm Mark Adam Miller. I am the president of the local Star Trek club called the US Hephaestus. We're here today for the Hoover Sci-Fi Fantasy Festival to discuss the CBS program Picard, which is on Paramount Plus. It was done last year, so most people have probably seen it. So we'll give you a quick overview of that. But first, I want to introduce the panel. First is Shane. Go ahead, Shane.
Hey, my name is Shane Pardue. I'm what you call a passenger on the Hephaestus. Basically, what I liked about Star Trek was maybe the stories, the humanized stories, more than other sci-fi. Is more human, but more a morality, story-based story. On that note.
Okay. And then we have Van.
I'm Van Allen Plexico, and I am the host of the White Rocket Entertainment Network. We have the White Rocket podcast, the White Rocket Babylon 5 review podcast, and On Her Majesty's Secret podcast about James Bond. And so quite a few shows and videos and all that at www.plexico.net. And I'm also the author of 19 novels and quite a few nonfiction books, including books on the Avengers and Marvel Comics and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. And last but certainly not our least person, Miss Carly.
Hi, I'm Carly Strickland. I paint cats in outer space for the most part. And I grew up on Next Gen and Voyager, and in college I discovered the original series, and that's really when my love of Star Trek truly deepened. Something about the mini skirts and the judo chopping, and I don't know, something about it. So.
Well, this is our panel. And first off, Picard is taking place several years after a massive destruction that has happened to the planet Romulus and what was involved, and him trying to recapture what was lost in because of an android, which all of a sudden that name has totally lost. I've lost the total name on that. Who came to him looking for help.
The girl,
Dodge. And which set him off on a quest, which is a possible quest for what was left of Data. Data died in the end of the Star Trek Insurrection, and most of the stuff was downloaded before and dealt with that. So, in a sense, what do you guys feel about this program? Did it meet your expectations? Did it not meet your expectations? What did you feel?
I said it was. I would say it was met the expectations I had, but since the new movies have come out, my expectations have kind of been lowered over the course of the new movies in the last few next gen movies. So it met it. I mean, there was some stuff that was interesting in it. I was more, let's see where it goes, and then let's see what happens in season 2 to really decide, because normally the first season of most Star Trek stuff is very rough. If history has kind of taught us anything about that, is the first season is rough on that.
My expectations were incredibly exceeded. So many of these shows that reboot things that we're nostalgic for, like the X-Files, like every time they try to bring something back, it always just seems like it's a pale copy. And I really didn't feel that way about Picard. My expectations were very low. But I actually was incredibly delighted by how good the show was. It's its own story. It has like exactly the right amount of like callback and cameos and stuff to characters that we know and love, but it also does a really good job of setting up a new era and a new, version of Starfleet that we've not seen yet, and new characters and a new plot line. And yeah, I just thought it was delightful. I was riveted in a way that I haven't been by newer Star Trek media. Like, I don't really care for Discovery. Like, it's like, doesn't keep me on the edge of my seat the way that I really was interested to see where Picard was going to go from the first minute of the show.
I love the original series in the 60s. And then everything that they've done since then has been increasingly disappointing to me. But I think that everything that they've done on Paramount Plus has been awesome, because it has such a completely different feel from the way the shows had in the 90s, the zeros, up to 2020, or whenever Discovery started. I feel like it's almost like the difference between the 1970s Battlestar Galactica and the more recent one. It's more serious. It's better written. I feel like it's better thought through. It's better acted. The effects are better. Everything about Discovery and Picard feels like a modern drama. Whereas the older shows, you have to be a Star Trek fan, in my opinion, to kind of get into them. You have to be a real Star Trek fan to sit down and watch Voyager or Enterprise or whatever. I just was like, eh. But I watched Discovery and I watched Picard, and I'm just like, anybody could sit down and watch this and be like, oh, it's some modern sci-fi show. It's very intelligent, very well done. So I was very pleased with it, exceptionally pleased, especially considering that I thought it had the potential, by bringing back Picard, as to just be a gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
I was very afraid they were going to use him poorly as a gimmick to try to get people in, but it really is his show, and I've been very impressed by that.
I am along that line. That was what I was afraid of, that this would come off of a gimmick, that it would be just a love letter to the fans, and only fans would get some of this stuff. There is some of that like, you have to know a little bit about Data, you have to know a little bit about Voyager, about 7 and 9 and stuff like that. But the story is there, you know what's going on. There is one thing that I might have gotten a little more out of it, because I did read the Picard book that came out, which is sort of how Picard met Raffi, because Raffi was his first officer when he was doing this stuff to try to save the Romulans before the destruction, and her work there, and how, in a sense, they fell apart. This is picking up this. The other part I liked about this is that there's no way Picard was going to be captain of the Enterprise for the rest of his life. There's going to be some change. And it's sort of, if you really look at it, if, let's say you were a teenager when it started out in 1987, you would be now in your 40s. And most people in their 40s are beginning to look at, okay, how am I going to retire? Where am I going to go after this? I've been probably working for 20 years. Some people have worked, they're on their second or third job. I was on my second or third job by my 40s, because of different things. And this showed that, okay, there is stuff to do than just, take your retirement and go off to your vineyard and have your dog number one. There's other things that you can still get out there and have an adventure. Probably not as spectacular as this, but.
And it's so rare to see like a big budget action show about an older person.
That's
and right. And they treat his age very gracefully. Like that, sometimes you'll watch like an action movie where like they're coming out of retirement and they can still like kick butt and do all this stuff. And like in the first episode, like they start running and he's like, I can't do this. Like I have to stop. I'm going to like fall over and break a hip. And you can tell it's really taken it out of him. And that was the moment when I fell in love with the show, actually, because I was like, they're not just going to pretend like he's totally fine and that he can do all these like action hero stuff.
Yeah. So, and also I liked when they brought in 7 and 9 because you always think, okay, what is 7 and 9 going to do? She is not a Starfleet officer. She's a former Borg. And in a sense, even coming back here, she's going to be looked as an enemy no matter what she did. Even though she had integrated herself to Voyager and would have the Voyager friend, on Earth, she would be a pariah. And it was interesting what she saw that she had to do. And of course, the things that happened with the Borg and her have to do, trying to save the Borg people without being destroyed, which I think that really shows up. Spoiler alert, when Icheb is killed. For those who haven't seen it, I do apologize for giving that bit out, but there's no way to get around that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that I found more interested in than the actual Picard thing was the 7 and 9 stuff that they kind of, because in Voyager she was kind of one-dimensional in a way. There were some things that it kind of fit into what they wanted 7 and 9 to be, and that if you know the backstory, that's what it became. But I think Picard it's more of a way that people can understand her as a person more than what the writers on Voyager wanted her to be. And
sex shop. There's no bad about it. 75% of the thing she was there is for sex appeal.
Yeah. And I think Picard really handled that well, and it gives us also, like fans of the show, that wanted 7 and 9 to be more depth. More depth.
That's true. Yeah.
And it was nice for them to tie Voyager back into the next gen, because Deep Space Nine has such a firm tie to Next Generation because it overlapped, and so many, Worf is on the other show, so like really firm in people's memories that like those two things happen pretty much in the same era. And then Voyager feels like so separate because they're in a totally different place, and there's like a little bit with like at the ending with Lieutenant Barclay and stuff like that, but for the most part Voyager is like its own thing. And for them to have decided to bring in Voyager characters, especially 7 of 9, back into Picard, really cements, all of their connections.
Anything from you, Van? Any more? Do you want to say anything on
that?
Well,
I have some thoughts when we get to what we had problems with, but I did I think in terms of the characters, I really like the supporting cast. And I was going to ask, I'm glad that you raised that point about those other characters, because I had a sense that at least the first officer lady with the curly hair, I forget what her name was, I felt like I was supposed to know who she was from the beginning, and I had no idea. So was she on another show, or is it only in a book, or what?
It's only in the book. If you read the Picard book, you find out Raffi was his first officer. And she is sort of, which comes from the show. If you've got to listen carefully. The reason she's disappointed in Picard is because, in a sense, she felt Picard gave up. Because the prehistory to this thing is that Picard is taken off the Enterprise to do this rescue mission of the Romulans, to get as many Romulans off Romulus as possible. And part of the problem with this whole thing is the government of Romulus didn't tell the people that, we got to leave, because if we don't, the supernova is going to destroy our planet. And they kept that from the people and kept things on the down low, and really didn't help what the Federation was trying to do. And so only 25% of the Romulan population was saved through Picard's effort. And then there was a android revolt on the Mars colony where the rescue ships were being made. And because of that, all these different laws were made so that androids would never again do this revolt. It's sort of the anti-Asimovian, and when I mean Asimovian, I'm talking about Isaac Asimov, Three Laws of Robotics, that happened. And that's where, Picard sort of, Starfleet in a sense fired Picard, because Picard says, either we do this or I'm out of here. And Starfleet, we're not doing this. It's over. We can't do it. The destruction of our shipyard makes it totally impossible for us to do anymore. And so Picard, in a sense, left Starfleet. And Raffi felt that he should have fought more. And so she sort of left Starfleet because she was disillusioned as well. And that's where the first officer. You might have seen Michelle Hurd comes up, and like she's best known as the ME in Special Victims Unit, Law and Order Special Victims Unit. That's that actress. I'm trying to find I can't think of what Rios Santiago is the pilot of the ship, and of course, all the different holograms he has to work the ship. He has a doctor, he has an engineer, which of course is sort of a callback to the medical doctor from Voyager type of thing, which I don't know if they were picking fun at the character from Voyager, because there was a couple times when the Voyager doctor saw himself more than just a doctor. In an episode where he is the emergency holodeck command officer in one episode of Voyager. So I don't know if that holodeck being the doctor and the engineer and the whole thing for the computer was sort of a joke against that, or if they were paying homage to how well a hologram could be used.
Well, I actually think it's just like a really nice progression of the technology. You know what I mean? Like I'd imagine like when Voyager gets back to Earth, like studying the EMH, like who had been on for so long and how much he evolved from the beginning of the show, like that would have led to an incredible burst in, okay, but what other roles in the ship could we fill, you know, with a hologram like that? I mean, I think that was just like a really beautiful progression of technology.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't there an episode where the doctor was promoted in Voyager to like a special emergency case, or am I thinking of something else?
There is an episode, but he really is. It's sort of his fantasy, and they have to use the fantasy to get themselves out of this place, that because this species was thinking that everything he was seeing was the true thing, but it was really the fantasy life of the doctor. And so they had to, so Voyager had to use this fantasy life doctor to convince this other species that it was too much to take on Voyager, because they had this fantastic hologram doctor. And of course,
Okay.
he lost several privileges because of what happened.
Okay, I must be mixing it up with something else, because I was thinking there was an episode of Voyager where they had to go through a nebula or something, and they had to be like in a stasis or something, and then the doctor had to be promoted to like kind of like a glorified autopilot in a way.
Yeah, there is that episode too, and he had to, but that's more of a 7 and 9 episodes where she's doing most of the stuff, and he's having to do certain things and being able to get around because of he was able to use his motor mirror, but he had to be careful as well because the tachyon rays or something would have caused him problems as well.
And then there's the time he took over command of Atlantis. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry.
Different character.
I did like seeing him though in other things. That
Yeah.
was cool.
Robert Picardo does a great job. He did a excellent job both in Voyager and in that. And
I mean, I remember him from Toy Soldiers, where he made the chip that controlled all the toy
Yeah.
robot, the action figures that try to murder everybody.
yeah,
That's what I remember him more from then. And then I remember him from Voyager and Stargate, and there's a few other things that I know him from, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
yeah. So, another person is Dr. Agnes Girardi, played by Alison Pill. I'm not exactly sure what. It's interesting that her character, she's trying to do what she is sort of manipulated by a Romulan agent because of what they think is going to happen if robots do take over, because of a person called Commodore O, who is a Romulan agent in the security force of Starfleet. And Commander O uses her love of, I cannot think of the doctor's name, Bruce Maddox. She fell in love with Bruce Maddox and his ideals and what he was trying to do. And then when he disappeared, because of what was happening, Commander O used her love of Bruce Maddox to try to destroy Soji, the robot, and make sure that what the Romulans feared would not happen, which, of course, that's the whole story of what robots do and stuff like that, which comes ahead in the end with stuff and this type of thing. This also, Jonathan Frakes and Marina Satters pop up. It's good to see them and see where they've gone. I love this part. It's just one story, and actually, it seems like it adds to the whole story overall. But there is just this story inside because Jonathan and Marina. I'm using the actor's name now. Will and Deanna had a child, and if Data had lived, the child would have survived. But because Data was no longer available, they lost a child. And then they had another child who did not have the disease, and must have been alone because there's what she plays is a lot of what her brother taught her, the child who died. And it's interesting how the family, they're coping with the death of one child and still raising their other child. And they've set up a house, and they're really, Riker seems to still be able to do things because later in the song he comes back as the head of the Armada from Starfleet. But I thought it was an interesting sideline story about what family life in the Federation is.
Well, I thought it was interesting that they used them at all because I know that there was some discussion going in. Their original plan wasn't to use hardly anybody from the old show because they were afraid it would look like, stunt casting and contrived. And then they said, well, we'll just use 2 or 3 where they most, perfectly fit the story. And they ended up doing that. And I think they're going to have some in season 2 as well. But I was very impressed because it really was very effectively done. You got, I mean, if you're going to watch a Picard show, you want to see Riker and Troy. I mean, they're beloved. They were always such a cute couple, beloved, on and off again. And so I was very, very happy to see them show up, and I was happy to see them get to actually do stuff. I was happy to see Riker get to, affect the outcome and be in charge again. And it was also cool to just see them chilling on their planet, barbecuing and hanging out. So I thought it was, if we were only going to see them just for, 2 or 3, basically scenes like that, I thought it was very effectively done. And the same thing with 7 of 9. I mean, we just got a few, and the Borg Hugh, right? We just got a few here and there, just like seasoning. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to make the show about them. It's about Picard. But just enough to whet your appetite, just enough to make you go, oh, good, we got to see them. They're still alive. They're doing well. You know, they're coping with post-Starfleet life. Because I got to think that trying to have any life after Starfleet has got to be a challenge, because it's, you know, it's like you're out there in the universe so powerful doing all these things, and then suddenly you're in retirement, basically. You know, Kirk couldn't even stand being an admiral, you know. So imagine being retired and just sitting there in your cabin. So yeah, I thought that was done very well.
That also, talking about characters, that also brings Data shows up a little bit, somewhat in a dream, and then later at the end as the farewell. My one, and this partly will probably delve into problems. The Dr. Soong character, who is a child or grandchild, I never could figure out which way it was, of the original Data's creator. How did you feel about bringing a Soong that we haven't even seen in the Next Generation at all? Did you feel they were overtaxing the character, or do you feel like it was a natural progression? Because yeah, it's a big universe. Maybe we wouldn't run into Soong's children.
I mean, how I felt was, I mean, the story kind of was heading that way once they got to that planet, and you kind of already knew that was kind of like the mystery of this series, is like who created this and who did this, and then you kind of like, well, okay, so A, B, C, D, okay, it's got to be a Soong, okay, but like you said, we'll get into it when we get to the problems we had. I had some issues with it, but nothing enough to turn me off from the series. It's just like, okay.
I don't know. I think if you're going to have just like random grandchildren showing up out of nowhere, like Soong is going to be like where that happens. It's pretty on brand for him, and the plot lines revolved around him and Data. You know, it's like, there's only one Data. Just kidding. Here's Lore. Just kidding. Here's this other android. Hey, look, it's Soong's wife, who everybody thought was dead. Oh, she's a robot too. Like, oh, look, he has random children we didn't know about. Okay, all right, great. I don't know.
That just happens to be
brand.
The thing is also, that happens to be as smart as the original Soong in a lot of respects too. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay.
Well, but you remember, Soong's wife was a very intelligent woman, and Soong, of course, he was a child of another intelligent man, who is the one that shows up in Enterprise. So, you know, most likely their children are going to be very intelligent, if not their grandchildren. Sometimes it skips a generation in some aspects. But yeah,
well, and he has access to all of that which has come before, right? That's the problem that the current scientists are having, is like, we can't recreate Data. He was the only one. We don't have super good access to like his parts or whatever. Like, they only have before, and they have nothing to build on because they didn't get a chance to study him as thoroughly as they wanted to. And then this other guy, I mean, he's had access to all of that stuff because right? Like, he's not just like reinventing the wheel out of nothing. Like, he's building on what came before in a way that no one else has been able to. Is that right? It's been a long time since I've watched this show.
Yeah, there was stuff he was building on. I think a little bit. I think some of the stuff he had, some of the stuff was from Commander Maddox and his work. And between the two, they were able, the two of them, I think, are the ones that created Dodge and Soji. And it came to a point that I think they had to be twins of some type throughout the whole thing. And that's how that creation came about. I don't want to go too far because I don't want, if someone hasn't seen it, I don't want to spoil the ending of this thing, even though it's been, by now, most people who want to see it probably want to see it, but
It's been about a year.
yeah, it's been about a year.
Yeah.
It came out at the beginning of last year, right before the whole pandemic thing started. They weren't sure if they were going to get through it because it almost was going at the very end. Let's see, any other characters we want to hit before we go into what the problems, more problems we have with this thing?
I was reading that Santiago Cabrera, that played Rios, was in very high demand. When they were producing this show, he had several offers for different shows, and he chose Picard, which meant that he saw the value in it. He saw the quality in it, which is interesting to me because also I was reading how when the producers, and I didn't even realize it was Michael Chabon that actually was the showrunner of the first season, who's done everything, and it's very well respected. But he and the other producers and writers went to they arranged a meeting with Patrick Stewart, and Stewart's goal going into the meeting was to find a polite way to say, I'm not doing this. No. And then when they showed him the idea, he's like, well, maybe, this is interesting. Let me look at it. And they went from like a 4-page plan to a 30-something page plan. And then he looked at that and went, okay, interesting, good. And so he decided that it was doing something substantially different from what he'd done before. And he compared it to coming back to play Professor X in Logan, which was substantially different than what he'd done before in the X-Men, And because of that, because of the quality and because it was different, it intrigued him enough to want to do it. And I clearly the actors were brought in, and Chabon were brought in because it was a well done story, well done production.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one thing that can bog down Star Trek, is because they know what worked with Star Trek, but they don't know how to take a step beyond that and continue. I think Discovery, especially the third season of Discovery, has really, really taken off because they, in a sense, have gone beyond by putting themselves back where TOS was. They were getting themselves in trouble because they kept running into, okay, what's canon? By stepping away from that and stepping in, and I think that's what made TNG better, because they've stepped away from the original and, okay, we've developed, we've come further, and that's what Star Trek needs. Each thing after each step needs to be something one step further to build the dream to be a better society, which I think is what Star Trek is all about.
Yeah, there was zero reason for Discovery to start out where it started out in time.
Why did they decide to make that a prequel? Who thought that was a good idea? Literally nobody.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you think they'd learn from Enterprise, because Enterprise didn't do well.
Enterprise effectively killed the Star Trek brand for a decade. Yeah.
So, and I think if they really take, which I hope they're going to do with, I want to say Where No Man's Gone Before, but
Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds. I hope that they realize, okay, let's leave the past in the past and set out and do the Pike series that the way that really needs to be done. And I hope they've learned that. And I think they are learning, because the way they've done Picard and the third season of Discovery, which is, and Lower Decks. I'm like blown away with Lower Decks, which will be talked about on Saturday later. I don't know when this will be broadcast, so I can't. It was either broadcast before this program or not, but so what other problems did we find that because of was there something that were really like, okay, they need to fix this in the second season, or I hope they don't redo this in the second season.
Well, I have one, and I wrestled with this the whole time I was watching the series. It's that what we liked about, at least for me, what I liked about Jean-Luc Picard was that he was a combination of the bold, charismatic leader and the very thoughtful, compassionate, considerate individual together, right? You know, he combined qualities that made for a very compelling lead character, and for a compelling commanding officer on a semi-military sci-fi show, right?
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that they wanted to do something different in this series, but by spending so much of the series having him be kind of broken and depressed and slowed down and second guessing, I mean, it kind of took a lot away from what made him appealing. I can appreciate they're trying to do something different. They're trying to show that he is in this point the result, the consequences of earlier events and earlier actions. I get every bit of that. I'm just saying, when you're trying to produce a show to appeal to an audience, and particularly an audience that already liked the character as he was before, I know you don't want to do the exact same thing again, but I actually found myself going, they're making him actively unappealing to me. And I had people telling me, well, just hold on, just wait, because they're showing him older and more feeble and everything now, because it's going to get better as the show goes along. And it really didn't, I guess, till the very end. I mean, it seemed like he was on his last legs, running out of gas the whole entire series. And that, I think that's one of the reasons that I appreciated the good supporting cast so much, is that I liked Rios, and I liked Girardi, and I liked the robot girls, whatever you want to call them, and Raffi and all them. I appreciated them. And I needed to, because if all I had was kind of old, depressed, second-guessing Picard, I might not have made it through the entire series. Did you guys, I want to ask you, did you guys have a sense that he was, that, I don't know how to put it exactly. I kept thinking like something's going to happen and he's going to get rejuvenated. And then on the other hand, I was like, maybe this is just how Patrick Stewart is. Maybe this is the most energetic and charismatic he's capable of being.
He's pretty old.
Yeah.
So I actually so right before this came out, I was like, it's been years since I've seen the Next Gen movies, right? And it's been forever. So I watched the last episode of Next Gen, then I watched all of the movies, and then like that week, the first episode came out. So I was like super fresh on the Picard character development, and it fit. Like, it fit, like, who he is as you see the movie, especially when the movies go down. He gets more cynical and downtrodden as those movies go on. And then you just have that extra jump, and then you hear about this, like, you know, catastrophe that he, like, quit over, and, like, seeing how that, like, damaged, like, his sense of self, right? Because, like, he is all about, like, this is the Federation, and this is like utopia, and that's not how things work here. Like this is the ideal. And to like continuously see that like not work out for him over and over and over again, especially in the last couple movies, I don't know, like it really made sense to me. Like if I hadn't have seen those movies, and if I had just sort of remembered Next Gen from, you know, ages ago or whatever, like I think I would have been really cranky about it, because I get cranky when the Federation is too dystopian. It's like, but yeah, no, I really do think there was a progression there.
Well, like Carly said, if you watched the movies and you kind of went fresh in Picard, it made sense. But I know a lot of people that was like, yeah, I've seen the movies. I'd rather watch TOS. I don't like the movies. But then the minute they showed Picard the way he was, they're like, well, Patrick Stewart's doing Old Man Logan, Xavier. And that's one thing that came up a lot was, oh, he just came off Old Man Logan, so he's doing Old Man Logan Xavier again. But it makes sense in the grand scheme, but I think that was one thing that I feel like they went a little overboard in a way where you had to watch the movies to understand that that's where he ended up. Not where, somebody that kind of vaguely remembers Picard or a lot, kind of like, oh, it was, like I would say, it's too much of a logical gap to go to point A to point B if you don't go in fresh by watching the movies and watching maybe some of the later TOS seasons. And that's what a lot of my friends and everybody's like, I don't like the movies. I just didn't like the movie. So why should I have to watch them again to understand where this character's going? Because the movies were not that great.
I didn't like the movies either. To be clear, I didn't like them. But if they're building on canon, which they're trying to do, that's gonna happen. And the canon for Star Trek is so big. There's going to be parts of it that they have to build on that people don't like because there's so much of it. You know what I mean? Like for years, I've been in total denial that Data is gone, and I just decided that didn't happen and that he lives forever and everything is fine and he has a million cats. Like I just was like, it's fine. And then Picard made me face, no, Data's really gone, and just because you didn't like that part in that movie doesn't mean it didn't really happen. So I don't know, and also I just looked up how old Patrick Stewart is. He's 80.
Yeah.
That's old. Let the man rest.
Well, and technically, in Picard, he's supposed to be in 120, getting close to because humans supposed to live about 150 years.
Yeah.
In the Federation, so he's 120, 125. So he's getting near the end. And so he has seen life. The Federation has failed him. So he is somewhat bitter. And he is doing what he knows he can, but he knows that it's not enough and doesn't know where to go. And this is one last chance to at least, and in this point, it's because Data was supposed to outlive everybody and didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the whole point of Picard is to say is that everything you do matters, and it is meaningful to somebody out there. And once you're gone, there will be people who will think of you fondly after you're gone. But you can still continue to, if you continue to still try to do your best, but then once that person is gone, just remember them fondly for what they are, but let them go to their next adventure, type of thing. And that's what Dave was asking, and at the end. So and Picard finally realized, okay, I need to let Data go and live what's left of my life. And I think that's what I'm hoping. And that takes us to, I think, what happened in season 2. And I think,
and I think he's accepting too, he's accepting that, the Federation isn't the perfect ideal. And him putting, in protest, basically, is him realizing, actually, the way I think things should work isn't the way things work. Especially when you're not in control of your own little bubble, your own little world, right? When you're captain of a starship, things do work the way you think they do because, you're totally in control. But, he's coming, to the realization that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Just because things aren't perfect, just because things don't work the way you think it should, you shouldn't try to fix it anyway.
Yeah. So what are we expecting for season 2?
What we're looking forward to, or what we're expecting.
Well, we know John Delancey's coming.
Yeah.
We know Whoopi Goldberg's going to be there. One thing I hope.
I didn't know that, but now I'm very excited.
Well, supposedly I'm hoping finally we get to see Whoopi Goldberg throw down with Q, because there was one episode where, what Carly just did, Guinan did that, but we didn't really see what powers Guinan had you and what the problem is. Maybe we'll get that. I'm hoping that will be fleshed out, and this is my hope for season 2. Let's flesh out why Q and Guinan don't get along.
See,
I want to see Jordy.
Okay, you want to see Jordan?
That's what I want.
All
I
right.
love Jordy.
I haven't heard about him. I haven't heard anything. I heard the one.
No.
I mean, is LeVar Barton doing Jeopardy now?
He's supposed.
Or are they just doing episodes with him?
I think it was this past week that he was doing Jeopardy, and I forgot to tape it. It's either this week or it was this past week or it's this coming week. I'm not sure. It may be this coming week. So check the Jeopardy channel because he's got Jeopardy for a week, and they'll donate to probably Reading Rainbow.
I was pretty shocked actually that they even announced that they were going to do a second season, because it really just felt like a standalone. They wrapped this whole plot up so nicely. Like, it really doesn't feel like where they're going to go is definitely going to be like, it's not just like a continuation of what we've got. They're going to have to go somewhere else.
Well, we have to have the light sword cut off the robotic arm of Picard.
Well, what I'm looking forward to is like a lot of the more fleshing out of this world, and to see, and I hope, like I said, that's why I'm very tempted with Star Trek, because first season's always kind of rough. Second season's normally, hopefully, where they get their footing, and footing, and get to flesh out the world, explain some stuff. I'm the opposite. I don't want to see the Guinan and Q thing. I want to leave that as a mystery.
Okay.
Just on the basis that it's the mystique of it. I feel like that's something that should keep the mystique. You can speculate and all this, but I'm like, I think it'd be better than mystique. But yeah, I'm more looking forward to like where they're going to go, how they're going to flesh out some of these newer characters, how they're going to interact with Q. And we know that from the trailer that Q does some shenanigans. So it's always fun to see Q shenanigans.
Always a good time.
Yeah.
Always a good time with Q.
I give you 1 minute, and then I've got to shut this down. So to give your thoughts.
I'm looking forward to more 7 of 9. I thought that what they did with her was really cool. I'm glad that she's like a recurring character now and not just making a guest appearance in season 1. So I'm kind of curious to see that. And I'm also kind of hoping that we'll see whatever iteration of the Enterprise there is in this time and place, because they considered using it in season 1 and they thought, well, it would just be kind of a throwaway thing. Let's save it for a real moment. So maybe we'll get that real moment. We'll see. I hate that it's going to have to wait all the way till 2022 to get the next season, though. It's going to be spread out.
Well,
6 months.
if your main character is 81 years old, so they definitely didn't want him getting COVID.
Well, you also need to move things along, though, too. So yeah.
Well, that's a good point. He's not going to be able to do it forever.
Right.
This has been fun, folks. I appreciate it. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Van. Thank you, Kelly. As always, this is the U.S. Hephaestus working for the Hoover Sci-Fi Fantasy Festival. Check us out on Facebook at U.S. Hephaestus. And if you can never remember the Hephaestus, just think of Vulcan and look up the Greek god of Vulcan, and you'll get it.
We have 2 Zoom meetings a month, and also we meet usually once a month in person for a social. So you can find out all that information on our Facebook page.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this panel for the Hoover Sci-Fi Fantasy Festival, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.